Hi, everybody, and welcome to this conversation that I'm very happy today to have with Martha Boeglin. Martha is also a scientific writing trainer. She works for many different universities, and we've met a couple of weeks ago, and we thought it would be interesting to talk with each other and to share that with you about our experiences as scientists and as writing trainers. Martha, welcome.
Thank you very much. Hi, Gaia. Hi, everybody.
When we were preparing this conversation, the first topic that came to our mind is the question of the struggles when writing papers or dissertations, because many people experience it, and it was our impression that many people are not aware that it's difficult to write. So we're going to start by introducing ourselves, talk also a little bit about our experiences as writers, and then we're going to list what are the top reasons why it's difficult to write. Martha, would you like to start by introducing yourself and telling us also how was your experience as a PhD student writing?
Yes, with pleasure. I studied philosophy and I wrote a Ph.D. in aesthetics, philosophy of art. I loved my topic, and after 3.5 years, I started to have the feeling that I knew what I was talking about. I was able to talk about my topic during the whole night. I was able to answer all possible questions, so that I started to have the feeling now my project is mature. I can start to write. And I announced everywhere that I would start to write my thesis the first Monday of the coming month. Monday at 8 o'clock, at that Monday, I turned on my computer and then blackout. I didn't know anything anymore. My head was empty. I didn't know what to write. I didn't know what I was doing there. I didn't know what should be the outcome of the whole thing. And it took me a couple of hours to calm down. Once I calmed down, I wrote one sentence, the first sentence of my dissertation. But I didn't like it, so I deleted it.
Do you remember the sentence?
No, I don't remember. Because then I rewrote it. I wrote another one and I disliked it as well, so I deleted it. And again, I tried another one, which I deleted. I spent the whole day trying to write one single sentence unsuccessfully. The second day, the same, so that at the end of the second day, I drew the only conclusion I could draw, namely, I'm too stupid for writing essays. And then I didn't know what to do. I belong to the generation before internet. It was not possible to look for information in forums or whatever on internet. I didn't dare to talk about my problem to anybody because I thought, I was so ashamed to discover that I'm so stupid. I didn't know what to tell my friends, my parents, my family, my professors. Big crisis. And from then on, I didn't even try to write anymore. But since I had scheduled all my time for writing, I didn't have anything else to do. So that every day at 8 o'clock, I turned on my computer. And then I spent the whole day looking at the screen, waiting for something to happen. And something happened after 2 months, namely, I got a letter from my supervisor. He wrote something like, I translate from French, excuse me for having answered earlier. Okay, it was more than 2 months. Excuse me for having answered earlier, but I've been working on a book and I've been facing the joys and pains of writing. And then I thought, this is strange. This man who is so intelligent, so brilliant, who has published so many books, this man who writes so well has been facing writing pains, something like me. He was not able to write 5 rows. The letter was not longer than 5 rows within 2 months. And this sentence from my supervisor prompted me to, let's say, an inquiry. And I started to ask my friends, my colleagues, and that's when I discovered a big taboo at university, namely, when it comes to writing, everybody suffers. everybody, even the most experienced writers, even the most intelligent scientists or professors. So by the way, I discovered that my problem had a name, writer's block. I discovered that writer's block is normal. It belongs to the writing process. Nothing to worry about, nothing to question your intelligence. I also discovered that there are many techniques to overcome writer's block. And I also discovered that writing a dissertation requires organization. The better you organize yourself beforehand, the easier the writing will be. The contrary is also true. The less you organize yourself beforehand, the more chaotic and difficult the writing process will be. And all those discoveries helped me then to write my thesis. And from the moment on I could overcome my block, then I was able to write in a flow, and I finished my thesis within 3 months. That's my story. And how was your experience with writing your thesis, Kaya?
It was very much like your professor said also. It was a lot of pain and suffering. I was also, like you, very enthusiastic about my research topic. I loved it. So I studied first biology, then I studied psychology. And I did my PhD thesis in combination between both in the field of social neuroscience. So I was interested in how the brain reacts when we're in social interactions. And I love my PhD thesis. I worked on the topic of morality, not so far also from philosophy. And so I was interested in how people think about moral situations, how they react when they're in moral situations with other people. But it's a very broad topic. So, and I had this concept, I had this idea that I should know everything about everything, and I should write everything in my PhD thesis. I wanted my PhD thesis to be exhaustive. I wanted it to be a masterpiece that people could come back when they would want to know something about morality. So I didn't really realize that there were thousands of years behind me that I was supposed to report, and that it was not really possible. So I tackled the task with a lot of enthusiasm, and soon I realized that I was not satisfying really the standards I had set for myself. A bit like you, like I started writing, I didn't really like what I wrote. I started writing about lots of stuff, and then my PhD thesis got bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, in the end, it was over like 450 pages, which is in psychology, like it's 3 times what you're supposed to write. So I think the people in my jury, the professors in my PhD thesis jury, probably had a fit when they saw this monster stuff come to them that they were supposed to judge. And I was very unsatisfied with everything I was writing. I was putting a lot of pressure. As you said, also, I was very disorganized. I didn't really know where to start, what to do. I didn't have really supervisors who were helping me in this process, in this writing process. Intuitively, I didn't do the things that would have helped me. And I must say that, on the contrary to you, I was maybe a bit proud to look for solutions. I didn't at that time, I think, realize that I had to change something about my writing process. I just went through the pain. I spent, I think, 4 months in my little room in Paris. I had a little apartment, it was 23 square meters with view on a wall. And it was in a very nice place in Paris, but it was absolutely dark. It was very small. And I spent 4 months in this apartment working like crazy, writing, rewriting, changing stuff, not really having a direction. And when I finished my PhD thesis, I had totally underestimated also how much time certain of these steps were taking. All the practical things I had pushed to the end, because I kept on writing and rewriting and writing and rewriting, especially the introduction, a bit like you with this first sentence. And then on the last week, I realized I had other things to do, and I had a deadline. I had to submit my PhD thesis on a certain date. And suddenly I realized I had all these things to do. So I think I must have slept like 10 hours in a week. And before I printed my PhD thesis, I worked, I think, 35 hours in a row to get it finished. So it was a disaster. And it worked well. Like I submitted it in time. There were like lots of typos. There were lots of mistakes in it, but it went through. I got also a very good mark for it. But I was a real zombie at the end. I really thought I would have some kind of seizure, a psychotic event or something like that, because I was so exhausted. I was putting so much pressure on me. And it took me some time. It's only like after several years afterwards where I kept on noticing I'm stuck. I'm not really moving forward. My writing process is so painful that I started looking for solutions, discovering there were some, and thinking that maybe I was not alone and that maybe other people were experiencing the same thing and I could also share this experience and all these things. And I must say, I'm not totally through. I don't know how it's for you, Martha, because you also have a blog. So both of us have blogs and we have to write for blogs. And I do enjoy it. But for me, writing is still often a form of struggle I have to overcome up to the point where I enjoy it. Is it the same thing for you, Martha?
Well, not really. I enjoy writing because when I'm not clear about what I want to write, I always start with writing games such as free writing, brainstorming, clustering, mind mapping, things which are pleasant, which help me to come into the topic. And I'm very happy that I got rid of the perfectionism at the beginning. So I know it is a process. I know sometimes it will take me a long time to be happy with the quality of my text. Well, first of all, I think in German, in French, in English. So I mix languages. And I would say 30 years ago, I would have obliged myself to write only target language. Nowadays, I just mix them. If I don't find the right word in French, I write it in German, I write it in English, and then little by little, I improve my text. So this makes things much easier.
Yeah. So you see, guys, there is hope at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, there is light.
Absolutely.
So we thought that each of us would give a couple of reasons why it's so difficult to write. I think it's important to also understand why it's difficult to write, because then you can bring the appropriate antidote or remedy. There are many reasons, and for sure we're not going to be exhaustive, but each of us picked our three main reasons or three most inspiring maybe reasons we would like to share with you. Martha, would you like to start? Why is it so difficult to write?
Oh, there are so many reasons. When you write a PhD, one of the reasons is, for what I see among people who work, and I think that was my situation as well, is wanting to write it perfectly from the beginning. That means I write one sentence and then, as I did, it has to be perfect. So I spent hours and days in making it beautiful, elegant, whatever, without knowing if this sentence will stay in my text or not, without knowing which function it will have. Trying to make it perfect from the beginning is the best way to block oneself. Writing is a process. That means a good text is the result of many phases of improvement.
Just to comment on what you just said,
please.
I'm totally with you on that. I remember when I was writing the so said PhD thesis, also how often I spent like polishing some sentences and making them very nice and sound well, which is also more difficult if you write in another language as your mother tongue. And then having to delete like huge chunk of them. So I spend also a lot of time writing for nothing.
Yeah. And this is also what makes writing dispiriting, because you write a lot, you invest so much time, and then at the end, you just delete things because they are superfluous, they don't belong in the text, whatever. And when you realize that you've been working for nothing, then you lose hope, you lose interest in what you're doing, which is normal.
Is there something that helped you with your perfectionism?
Becoming aware that writing is a process. I will Just give an example taken from bakery. When you bake a cake, for example, when you bake Schwarzwaldtorte, this is a Black Forest cake, if you see how it is.
Lots of cream.
Yeah, cream, chocolate, cherries.
Yeah.
Don't start putting the cherries on the cake. You first collect your ingredients. You work on these ingredients in a given order to prepare dough. The dough is not beautiful. The dough is not tasty. The dough is not what you're going to give your guests, but without dough, no cake. And then you will work on, let's say, consolidating your cake, putting it into the oven. And then when it is solid, and only then, you will put the cream, the chocolate, and at the very end, you will put the cherries on the cake. So when you write a text, the process is quite similar. And I don't know why many people, including me 30 years ago, start with the cherry on the cake. That means I write one sentence, have no idea if I'm going to keep it, have no idea about its function, but as soon as I write it, I spend hours in making it beautiful. This is what I call the cherry on the cake. Actually, when you write a text, first, gather your ingredients. In this case, your ingredients are ideas. So collect your ideas. You can brainstorm them. You can pre-write them. You can cluster them. The goal is just to put down on paper all what you know about your topic so that you can see them. And then it's much easier to sort them out because not everything will be interesting for your text. And then you will work on these ideas, will order these ideas in order to write a first draft. The first draft is the dough of your cake. It's not beautiful, it's not perfect, it's not complete, it's not what you're going to give your readers, but without dough, no cake, without a first draft, no text. And then, only then, you will work on consolidating your text, adding explanations, definitions, quotations to support your affirmations, drawing conclusions, and so on. And at the very end, once your text is solid, then you will work on the style, working on the beauty of your sentences. And at the very end, you will put the cherry on the cake. So this is a process, and once you are aware of this process, then writing becomes much, much easier. Mm-hmm. Have you experiences with this you would like to share, Gaia?
Yeah, I can totally agree with you. I do the same thing also when I write my papers, my scientific papers. I do the same thing when I write my blog post. I try to break out this big goal into smaller goals, starting with this rough shape of the paper, rough shape of the blog post, if I'm writing a blog post or whatever, but trying to identify what you want to say. And when it's clear what you want to say, then you can think about how you want to say it. And often I think we tend to mix these two levels of expressing oneself in a nice way before we are really even sure what we want to say. And I have spent a lot of time like writing a nice sentence, but not knowing what comes next, for example. And then you realize, actually, I don't know how to connect it with the next idea, or I don't know what to do next. And as a consequence, maybe it doesn't really fit in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I can totally subscribe to that. I think also that writing is it's such a complex activity. There are so many different levels, and I was not really aware of that at the beginning. So many of the scientists I meet in my workshops are not aware that it's not just one thing. Like writing is not just you sit in front of your computer and you start typing. No, I always like to think like in movies when you see writers, right? I mean, or journalists, or I don't know, like novel writers, they just sit in front of their computers and they write and they're inspired and they look a little bit through the window and then they go on writing and then they write and write and write and they read it once, make a couple of corrections and that's it. The letter is put in the mail and that's it. And then it becomes a success. And I know someone who does that. My mom writes in this way. She used to be a journalist and she writes a lot. And she does write like that, but she has a huge experience. She's been doing that, I don't know, 30, 40 years of her life. So it's become like a second nature for her. And I think at the very beginning, you're not that far. And I am still definitely not that far. And I think also writing science is more complicated than that because you're going to be judged very closely. So really breaking up these different steps and realizing it's different kinds of activities is very helpful. And I read a book in which they were saying that the actual writing of your paper should only be just a quite limited % of the total time that you invest. Really writing the words that will figure in your paper is going to be maybe, I don't know, 20% of everything, because if you do your job well, actually, you're going to do a lot of preparation before that will make this step way easier. So I think really being aware of these different steps is definitely something that can help a lot. And this is something, not being aware of it is something that makes it very difficult, I find, for young scientists and even like more advanced scientists, because I mean, I know also many professors or many people who have done already a lot of writing who still struggle with that.
Yeah, you've said something which is, I think, very important to be aware of when you are writing scientific literature, and which can be also a source of block, namely the fear of being judged. And this can block you a lot, because then you see usually this anonymous mass of readers can imagine all their criticism and don't dare to write any sentence. Or first have the feeling that you have to look for support for every single idea. So this can also block you a lot. This is why I find, again, very important at the beginning, as you say, just to write without paying attention on the final version, but just first write your ideas, and then little by little you will keep what is really important, and then you will support what needs to be supported. But if from the beginning you start thinking of all the criticism of your readers, then you become so frightened that you don't even start.
I find that the reviewing process and this academic success make it also very difficult, because reviewers can be really tough. The publication process in many disciplines is very difficult. Submitted a paper some time ago and I got the reviews, and it was, I think, 3 pages of just criticism. There were maybe in total like 4 sentences that said they liked it. I suspect that they actually liked it, but it's just how it works. We scientists were trained to be critical. I see that also in my research group. We want to help, for example, young researchers when they're presenting their research project. And so we point to all the things that they could improve, because we think if they improve the things, then it's going to be better in the end. So I think the intention is not necessarily a bad one, but what happens is that when you get all this criticism, you've put so much effort, so much also of yourself, so much heart into what you write. And then you get this avalanche of negative comments. And it's very demotivating, as you said. It's very blocking. I noticed for myself that I was actually more relaxed writing at the beginning of my PhD thesis before I got my first reviews, because I still didn't know really what was to be expected. And so I had good feedback from my teachers when I was writing during my studies. So I was more confident, and then I submitted my first paper, and then I got all this criticism. And then I started really double checking everything I was writing. And as you said, that was like, I feel it's a bit like you have a chick that wants to come out of the egg. That's your idea, the stuff that you want to say. And then the moment when it comes out, the critical mindset comes and say, no, that's wrong because of this and that. You want to say something, but at the same time, you see that it can be criticized, and it's very frustrating. It's very, how do you say it, handicapping.
How do you deal with this avalanche of criticism? Because I guess you improve your text according to their recommendations or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you
first I want to say, if you're desperate because you just received some negative reviews, then welcome to the club, because I'm still in that state. And when I receive them, my first reaction is first to think they're stupid, they don't understand what I'm saying. and then to think I'm stupid, I will never make it. I think it's a very natural reaction many people have. I think with time, you know that it's part of the game. The way I deal with my own perfectionism and my own inner critic mindset is that I write something and I stop myself at some point, even if I'm not satisfied with it, and I give it to someone else whom I trust, who could review that. So a co-author, a supervisor, whoever that can be, and I ask them to read it, because I think at some point you cannot see this stuff anymore. You don't see your own thoughts anymore, and you don't have to. I think it's illusory to think you can judge your own work. So, but someone else can do it. And then I may change certain things, and then I'm not necessarily happy with it, but I just send it out. And then I got feedback. And you know what? It's crazy, because sometimes there are stuff you love and they don't get published in good journals, although you think this is really great. And sometimes there are stuff where you're just like, you're both, and they get published. So you really don't know what is what. You don't know how it's going to be taken, because change plays a huge role in that. So that's how I deal with it. Is there anything else, Martha, you think is a reason why we struggle so much when we have to write?
Perfectionism, fear, and also the delusion of grandeur. I write paper or I write my thesis and I want it to be acknowledged, perhaps to get the Nobel Prize, to make me famous, whatever. And I set the goal so huge that I got afraid of what will happen if I would reach this goal, so that I don't dare to start. Forget it. If you have this kind of delusion, start small, and perhaps little by little, if you improve your text and your text gets great, then perhaps it will have great consequences for you. But don't start with this goal, with a goal which is scaring you. This is what I would say. So 3 main sources for writer's block when you prepare a PhD are perfectionism, first, second, the fear of criticism, and the third one is delusion of grandeur.
I'm so guilty of this one. But I also got better at it. I realized that the Nobel Prize is probably not going to be for me, but it was a difficult morning process. I have another one I would like to mention also, coming a little bit from my angle as a biologist and psychologist. It's the fact that I think we are not pre-programmed to write. And I think it's important to keep that in mind, in the sense that our brains are made to speak. There is a predisposition in our brains to acquire language and to understand language. When we come to the world, when like newborns are already interested in voices, they recognize very early voices and words also in their own language. They start to pick it up very quickly. They start also repeating stuff. And this is something that happens very naturally. They don't have to learn it. It's a very natural process. You don't go to school to learn to speak your own language, right? You're just around people and that happens. But writing is something that's different. Writing it's an invention from humans. It's something that humans have invented few thousand years ago. And this is something that has emerged and that has been transmitted from generation to generation. But it hasn't made it into our brains, really, so to speak. So that's the reason why we have to learn, and we have to go to school. We learn to form letters first, and we learn also these grammatic structures we learn to understand. And this is something that we have to acquire. And I think we are often not really aware that this is a skill really very much like, I don't know, knitting or building a table or whatever. It's not something you're born with. You learn to acquire these skills. And if you get the right information, if you get the right exercise also, if you practice enough and you're trained by people who know how it works, you will learn it. And I'm absolutely convinced that anyone can learn it. And I mean, the experience is not that complicated if you know what to do. But often we assume it should come naturally to us. And I think this is a mistake. And I think acknowledging that this is just something to learn and finding the right information, the right methods. There are different methods. Several of these methods work for sure, can save tremendous time and lead you also to experience pleasure in writing. Because at first, when you're beginner, when you don't know how to do things, it's always difficult to do it. And then you become an expert at it. You know how it works, like you said, Martha. You know, okay, I'm hitting a wall here. I have my techniques. I know I have my toolbox. I can use free writing. I can do this. I can organize myself. And then you come into flow way more easily.
I agree absolutely with you. Writing is a complex thing. How does it happen that universities don't teach writing? Don't teach you how to write. It's starting now a little bit, but it's still not enough. They don't teach you how to write your thesis, how to write papers. And they convey the illusion that all what you needed to learn about writing has been learned at school, while actually what you learned at school absolutely doesn't help you to write a master thesis or a doctoral thesis or not even papers. How do you explain that?
That's a very good question. I don't understand it. I think there is a huge taboo around writing.
Yeah, I think it's a taboo as well.
But I don't know where this taboo is coming from, because there is no problem learning statistics. I mean, we learn a whole bunch of other things. Why not writing? You know what, Martha? I'm actually suspecting that many people don't know about that. I think many people are not so much aware of it. Do you have a hypothesis about that?
No, I don't. I also think that it is a huge taboo, but the reasons for this taboo are still mysterious for me.
Yeah. So if you are struggling writing, welcome to the club. The world suffers from people who also have difficulties writing and who don't dare also talking about it. There are things to do. There are ways to stop struggling and to really also enjoy it, because it's a way to express yourself. And there is something wonderful about sharing your ideas to the world and also developing these ideas in your writing. If you want to know more about all these topics, Martha and I both have blogs where we talk about writing. We talk about all these methods. We talk also about our experiences as scientists and as trainers. Martha, would you like to tell us where we can find you?
Sure. My blog is Scriptoria.org, and I write both in French, English, and German. What about yours, Gaia?
So my blog is called abrilliantmind.blog. We will put the link to both blogs in the notes so you can find them easily. And I think, Martha, you have also writing courses, is it right?
Yes, I run writing courses in online courses about how to write your thesis, how to write a scientific paper, and also how to deal with scientific literature.
If you want to follow a writing course, you can check Martha's. I have also lots of resources on the blog. I've just finished writing a ultimate guide that you can to scientific writing that you can consult. I have templates also to write different parts of your papers. So please feel free to visit our blogs. Please feel free also to leave us comments. We love to hear from you. What are your struggles? How do you deal with them? How have you overcome them? Why do you think it's difficult to write? We would love to hear what you think. And we're considering maybe continuing these discussions, Martha and I, about different topics relating to scientific writing. So if you're interested, also feel free to leave us a comment and to let us know what you would be interested to hear about. Martha, it's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you very much for your invitation. It was also a great pleasure for me to talk with you.
So bye, guys, and a wonderful writing session.